You see, when you tell anyone to reach out to the nearest police officer when they're in trouble, you could be correct. But the tragic story of Sarah Everard has set that back such a distance that it will take the British police a long time to recover. It was Wednesday the 3rd of March, and 33-year-old Sarah Everard had just left her friend's flat in Clapham, South London, heading to the Brixton Hill area where she resides. It was a 40-minute trip she had made a dozen times, so it was nothing new. But still, Sarah did everything society stipulated to stay safe. She kept in touch with her boyfriend along the way, and even wore a bright colour jacket, making it easier to be spotted by passers-by. Apparently, these precautionary measures weren't enough to spare her from the danger that was about to happen. Sarah was stopped by a Metropolitan Police officer who was off duty. Constable Wayne Cousins identified himself as an officer and flashed his police warrant card before falsely arresting Sarah for breaching lockdown regulations. He handcuffed her and placed her at the back of the vehicle he had hired that same day. Sarah cooperated with the police officer, thinking he would drive her to the nearest police station, but Cousins had something else in mind. Born in Surrey in June 1987, Sarah was one her friends and colleagues would describe as being terrible at karaoke but exceptionally talented at everything else. She was overly empathetic and kind, and was very popular and well-liked amongst her peers. And this was undeniable because she was a modest citizen who had never been in trouble with the law. Sarah respected authority at all times and paid her dues, and not wanting to be on the other side of the law could have been why she fell for the false arrest. Like every other girl her age, Everard had big plans for her future, and there were still many things she wanted to achieve. Sarah grew up in York, where she attended Fulford School before proceeding to St Cuthbert's Society, Durham University, where she studied human geography. In 2008, she moved all the way down to London to work as a marketing accounts manager. Ending up in Brixton, a pretty popular place for young professionals, she worked in various public relations companies and marketing agencies, before ending up at a digital media agency, a new job she had just started in February 2021. It was just a few weeks after she started this new job as a marketing executive that she made that long walk home and never made it. Sarah had a conversation with her boyfriend on that fateful evening, and they planned to meet the next day, but she never showed up. It was March 3rd, 2021, and Sarah set off by 5 p.m. to visit a friend in Clapham Junction, a 45-minute walk from Brixton, where she stayed. On her way to Clapham, she stopped to buy a bottle of wine at a local convenience store before heading to her friend's house to enjoy a night out socialising. Sarah had spent a lot of time catching up and decided to call it a night by 9 p.m. She left her friend's house in Clapham Junction and started her 2.5-mile walk back home. She is seen from a private doorbell-type camera walking alone along the A205 Poinders Road towards Tulse Hill, calling her boyfriend and staying on the phone with him for around 14 minutes, before crossing Clapham Common, heading towards the South Circular. Everard can be seen wearing navy blue trousers with a white diamond pattern, a green rain jacket, and turquoise and orange trainers, and was apparently wearing green earphones and a white beanie hat. About 30 minutes into her walk to Brixton, CCTV footage catches a glimpse of Wayne Cousins' hired vehicle prowling the very same street Everard had been walking. After a short while, a passing bus catches the moment where Sarah Everard is stopped by Wayne Cousins at about 9:35 p.m. Here, you can even see his white hired vehicle parked next to them. According to the witness in the bus, the scene was that of an undercover policeman who was in the process of arresting an erring passerby, and nothing suspicious. The scene, which was captured twice by bus CCTV, showed them beside the hired Vauxhall at 21:38, capturing the Vauxhall's number plate. Wayne was said to have flashed his police warrant card at the unsuspecting 33-year-old and told her he was arresting her for breaching COVID regulations. He then proceeded to cuff her, placed her in the back of his hired vehicle, and drove off. At the onset, Everard had no cause for concern, as the warrant card Wayne had shown her was legit, and he was indeed a serving Metropolitan Police officer. Wayne Couzens was a police constable and firearms officer serving in the Metropolitan Police. He joined the Metropolitan Police from the Civil Nuclear Constabulary in September 2018. 2 years later, he was assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection, where his job was to protect government and diplomatic premises, which included the Palace of Westminster. As part of his recruitment, Wayne had not undergone enhanced vetting, nor had he undergone the 2-year mandatory probation period with the Met before joining the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection, PADP. Couzens had just finished working a 12-hour shift at the US Embassy on the night of the incident and decided that this was the night he'd find a victim. Couzens had long planned for this night, weeks in advance, where he'd carry out a cruel and violent sexual assault on a yet-to-be-selected lady who he intended to coerce into his custody. As early as the 10th of February, Wayne had purchased a pair of handcuffs off Amazon, the same cuffs he would later use to arrest Everard. On the day of the kidnapping, he finished his shift at 7 a.m. before heading back home. The police officer then told his wife, Elena Couzens, a completely fabricated story that he'd been working again that evening. It came as a shock to Elena, whose husband had just come from a shift and was about to head out to work yet again. But Elena had never noticed any behavioural changes in her spouse, so she didn't worry too much. Wayne Couzens instead drove to Dover, where he picked up the hired vehicle, which he booked 3 days earlier. Everything seems to have been going according to plan. You see, Wayne spent at least a month shuttling between Deal, Kent, where he lived, and London, to research how best to carry out his crimes. Aside from booking the hire car, which he would use for the abduction, he also bought a roll of self-adhesive film advertised on Amazon as a carpet protector. On the prowl for his next victim, Wayne toured the streets, hoping to land an unsuspecting victim. At about 9:30 p.m, Officer Couzens pulls up on Pointers Road and stops the unsuspecting Surrey-born along the way. He shows her his police warrant card and then handcuffs her as part of the bogus arrest. Wayne then places her in the back of his vehicle and drives off. CCTV again captured the hired vehicle after the arrest. The next time Wayne Couzens is spotted is around 11:43 p.m. He parked his hired vehicle on North Military Road and then transferred Sarah to his own private vehicle. He then drove her to a remote area where he brutally raped and murdered her and dumped her body in a wooded area in Kent. Couzens is believed to have raped Sarah between 11:53 p.m. and 12:57 a.m. on March the 4th, because the police connected his mobile phone to cell sites in the area of Siebertswald. Not long after the murder, Couzens is once again spotted on CCTV. This time, he is seen at a local gas station in Dover, where he went to buy Costa hot chocolate and a Bakewell tart. Judging by his composition, Couzens seems quite relaxed. It's baffling to think that the man you can see in this footage looking unperturbed had just committed such a hideous act. At around 7:30 a.m, Wayne returned to North Military Road, where he'd earlier left the Vauxhall. The first thing he did was to dispose of Sarah's cell phone and SIM card in a nearby river before going back to the vehicle and returning it to the vehicle hiring company. Couzens was again spotted on camera at 11:05 at a BP fuel station, where he is seen purchasing a fuel can. Couzens then proceeded with filling the container with 1.5 gallons of gas. After that, he placed it in his vehicle and headed back to the wooded area where he previously dumped Sarah's body. Wayne then doused her body with the gas he had just purchased and set it on fire inside a refrigerator. The next day, Everard, who had a meeting scheduled for early that morning, never showed up at work, which was very unlike her. Sarah also arranged to meet up with her boyfriend later in the afternoon, but she didn't show up either. Her boyfriend made a call to her colleagues, who confirmed she didn't show up at work that day. It was at this point that alarm bells went off. Sarah's boyfriend could instinctively tell that something was seriously wrong and immediately filed a missing persons report at their local police station. the police swung into action immediately and checked the CCTV footage of cameras in the area. It became evident that she had made it to her friend's place as scheduled, but didn't turn up in any other footage confirming she made it home, so something must have happened along the way. At the onset of the investigation, the police had asked the public to check their home cameras to see if they noticed anything suspicious or any other relevant information about her whereabouts. The public responded by sending in a lot of footage, which helped establish timelines for her activities. However, the police could hardly identify any suspect, and with no major leads, the case grew cold. Meanwhile, Cousins was doing all he could to cover up his tracks back in London. On the 5th of March, Wayne is seen again on CCTV footage buying 2 builder's bags from a local hardware store, before heading back to Hodes Wood, where he used the bags to move the body of his victim. On the 7th of March, 4 days after he murdered Sarah, Cousins returned back to the Hodes Wood area, but this time he brought his family, comprising Elena, his wife of Ukrainian descent, and 3 kids, on a family vacation. It's quite bizarre that the killer cop would take his family close to the very same place he had dumped Sarah's body only a few days prior. However, it is also believed he did that to create the perfect alibi. Wayne Cousins was having the time of his life with his wife and kids, but little did he know that the police back in London were already picking up on his trail. On the 8th of March, Wayne reported himself ill from work, handing in his equipment, including his handcuffs and police belt. By the 9th of March, the investigation had ramped up even more. The authorities eventually received the CCTV footage from the bus company, and they were able to identify the license plate of the vehicle that Cousins was driving that evening. While tracing the white Vauxhall car from the number plate, the police were led to the car hiring company in Dover. When they arrived, staff at the firm gave them the details of the person who had rented it, along with the 2 mobile numbers that had been given. When they ran the phone numbers through the police database, they came to a horrifying realization. One of the numbers was registered to one of their own, Wayne Cousins. Upon closer inspection and tracking his movements on the night of the murder, it was evident that the 48-year-old was their prime suspect. In the days after the murder, Wayne reportedly told his senior colleagues that he had been suffering from stress and no longer wanted to wield a gun. So, after keeping an eye on his day-to-day activities, cops were ready to arrest the Metropolitan Police officer. On the 9th of March 2021, police went to the home of Wayne Cousins. He denied having any knowledge of who she was or where she was, saying he couldn't obviously know her. Cousins went on to claim that the only information he had about her was what he got from the news. But, after a bit of probing, Wayne owned up to the allegations, bizarrely claiming that he was threatened by Eastern European men who had instructed him to abduct a random girl and then hand her over to them. There were speculations that he might have been tipped by an insider that the police were set to storm his residence, because 30 minutes before they showed up at his door, Wayne set his phone to factory settings to conceal any evidence. Wayne also said the syndicate who knew he was in a financial mess threatened to kill his family if he didn't comply with bringing a girl to them. He claimed he and the group never had any solid means of communication, as they monitored his movement and showed up when they had a message to deliver. But the police weren't buying the story, and Cousins was immediately arrested on suspicion of kidnap. The police inquiries found that Wayne had left London in the hours after Everard went missing, and was in Kent in the early morning hours. He returned the hire car that same day. As there was a small chance Sarah was alive and being held somewhere against her will, the police were authorised to do an emergency interview without the presence of a solicitor. News of Sarah's murder spread like wildfire, and when the public heard that a serving police officer had been arrested in connection with her case, it sparked a nationwide outcry. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, described the crime as dreadful and that everyone in the police force felt betrayed and embarrassed. Sarah's uncle referred to it as baffling and unbelievable and said it's difficult to wrap your head around it. On the 10th of March, the police conducted a vigorous search of the woodland area by Ashford and their house in Deal, where the family cars were confiscated. Dog units and a chopper were deployed, and the entire area was combed, but they couldn't locate any remains. The police again arrested Wayne, and this time on suspicion of murder. Police later discovered that he had purchased a small part of Hoad Wood in 2019, and his phone data proved that he had been within that vicinity at the time. But at 4:20 p.m. that same day, the search for Sarah came to a devastating and abrupt end. Human remains were found in a large builder's bag approximately 100 meters from a plot of land owned by Cousins. Using dental records, the remains were identified as being that of Sarah Everard. Her family immediately released a statement. "Our charming daughter Sarah was taken from us, and we are broken-hearted. Sarah was our youngest child and our precious little girl. The feeling of loss is so great, it is visceral. There's this great wave of panic of not being able to see her again. We can never hold her again, never talk to her, and never more be part of her life. Sarah was bright and beautiful, thoughtful and kind. She always puts others first and had the most amazing sense of humour. She brought so much joy to our lives, and we're very proud of her. We would like to thank our family and friends for all their support during this awful time. We would especially like to thank Sarah's friends who are working tirelessly to help." Soon, various activist groups across the UK voiced their concerns over Everard's case involving a police officer and organised a peaceful demonstration against police brutality and gender-based violence. When the Metropolitan Police heard about the protests that were being organised, they kicked against it, saying it would breach COVID regulations. They threatened the organisers with arrest if the event went ahead, and they made good their claim. It perhaps comes as no surprise that the police couldn't see the irony of their actions. Although the activist group Reclaim These Streets cancelled the event, members of the public weren't having any of it. They were determined to go ahead with the protest, and no amount of police intimidation would deter them. On the day of the protest, police tried to disperse the crowd, leading to many altercations between the Metropolitan Police and members of the public. Many unflattering photos surfaced where policemen pushed women to the ground and arrested them for protesting against police brutality and gender-based violence. On the 11th of March 2022, a year after the protest, the UK High Court ruled that police breached the rights of the organisers and their handling of the planned event. The High Court would later deny Met's permission to challenge its ruling on Sarah Everard's vigil. The outpouring of grief and shock was huge. Many flowers were laid in tribute to Sarah Everard as the public expressed their disgust that something like this had happened. People from all walks of life were touched by Sarah's case. Even the Duchess of Cambridge was there to lay flowers in the memory of Sarah as part of a vigil on the 13th of March at the bandstand. The UK's ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson decried the incident, saying his thoughts and prayers are with Sarah's family and friends. Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, said he could only imagine the pain and terrible agony that Sarah went through, and that all women should be able to feel safe on the streets of London at all times. It also later emerged that the police had made a number of mistakes regarding the killer cop. His colleagues at work had given him a nickname and actually referred to him as the rapist because he apparently made women feel uncomfortable. Yet the police never investigated his behaviour or addressed the way he handled women or how he made them feel. Cousins had also previously been accused of indecent exposure on a number of occasions where he allegedly exposed himself to women. But surprisingly, the police had failed to investigate any of these claims. The first claim dates back to 2002, while the very last claim happened on the 28th of February 2021, only 3 days before Sarah Everard's murder. On the 28th of February 2021, Cousins allegedly flashed 2 women on 2 separate occasions, one at a local McDonald's branch. On the second occasion, Wayne appeared naked in a narrow, rural lane in Deal, the Kent coastal town where he is from, and exposed his genitals as a woman cycled past. The woman later reported the incident online to Kent police. Although the police never made any arrests despite the overwhelming evidence, when Wayne was arrested over the disappearance of Sarah, she contacted the police again after recognizing his picture. Many people believe that the Metropolitan Police were deliberately being nonchalant to avoid the embarrassment of having to arrest one of their own. On the 8th of June 2021, Cousins pleaded guilty to the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Sarah Everard and admitted responsibility for her death. At a hearing on the 9th of July, he pleaded guilty to her murder. Cousins was eventually sentenced to a whole lifetime behind bars on the 30th of September 2021, meaning that he wouldn't be eligible for parole and would eventually die in prison. This was the first time a UK court had handed a whole life term for the murder of a single individual where terrorism was not a factor. The judge said that the crimes of Wayne Cousins were as serious as terrorism because of the way he abused his role as a police officer, with Cousins having likely used COVID powers to trick Everard into his car, using his police warrant card and handcuffs to restrain her, and his police belt to strangle her, the ultimate abuse of power. Barely a month after his sentence, Cousins applied for leave to appeal against his sentence, but the Court of Appeal would later reject his appeal in July of the next year. On the 18th of March 2022, more than a year after Sarah Everard's murder, the Metropolitan Police announced they were charging Wayne Cousins with 4 counts of indecent exposure. The incident allegedly took place between January 22nd and February 27th, 2021. In August 2022, the Metropolitan Police announced they were charging Wayne Cousins with an additional 2 charges of indecent exposure. The alleged offences apparently took place on the 9th of June 2015 and the 13th of November 2020, thus bringing his total charges of indecent exposure to 6 counts. Wayne Cousins denied all the charges when he attended the sentencing via video link from HM Prison Frankland in County Durham, where he'd be living for the rest of his life. Cousins was sentenced to 19 months for 3 offences of indecent exposure before he murdered Sarah Everard. While his new sentence will have no effect on his punishment, as he has no chance of parole and will die behind bars, the judge said it would serve as a public recognition of the fact that offences have been committed and mark the courage and resilience of the victims who helped convict him. Everard's family said they were pleased that Cousins received a full life sentence and will spend the rest of his life in jail. And even if it couldn't bring Sarah back, it would forever bring them some relief, knowing he would be imprisoned for the rest of his life. We have no idea why police took this long to charge Wayne Cousins, but if they had acted earlier, Sarah Everard might have still been alive today. Please visit our online video course that will teach you everything you need to know about self-defense. 50% of all sales will be donated to a women's charity that combats domestic violence. Link to the program is in the description below.